Hey everyone, Sari here, and welcome to the highlights from this week of light season offense matches. I've been meaning to let Alear take the spotlight at some point during the Fire Month, and while this season wound up being too late to work as propaganda for the voting gauntlet, while also being a less than ideal week for bonus units, it was still a great chance for her to shine. Alear herself is sticking to her base kit. The first hits DR from her weapon combos neatly with the unpierceable DR from her special and the single hit DR from Nullsea Disrupt to mitigate the bulk of any incoming damage. It also gives her plenty of firepower. With Nullsea Disrupt and a distant counter seal securing her counterattacks, she can take full advantage of her multi-hit weapon, the true damage from Finish, and the full pierce effect of Dragon Blast to demolish her opponents. Pledge ends up being a bit of an awkward skill here, with Marth's Engage giving her a one-charge special and Lumera's support giving her Null Guard. The breath effect is completely redundant. The extra combat stats also require an ally within 2 spaces instead of 3, which can be less reliable than I'd like against some setups. I'll probably end up replacing it at some point. Insight, Infantry Null Follow, Panic Smoke, and Fatal Smoke are all options I'm looking at. I did opt to use Lumera as the team's support option here, although I did have a nearly identical second team using Gatekeeper instead, in case the extra healing and Warp Bubble turned out to be too much to lose. Lumera is a really solid support mythic. Her ability to create feud-proof stone dragon veins is extremely valuable for tanking strategies, as is her in-combat Null Guard and stat support. While the range of her effects can feel limited if you're used to Milla, she's still very effective with the right positioning. I decided to lean into her Ruse support here. Giving her Res Paint lets her debuff 3 different stats in her own column, and Ruse's ability to cripple any triangle attack or dual strike setups is a solid alternative to relying on Gatekeeper. The other mythics are business as usual. Milla and Ashe do a great job of sabotaging enemy stats from across the map, with Milla also providing long-range stat, isolation, guard, and dull attack support. Ashe and Peony create an excellent mobility support pair, helping the team to navigate through cramped opening positions and find inventive ways to approach an enemy formation. Rockslide Dance is a particularly useful bonus for Alear, giving her an extra layer of damage reduction to work with. Leon rounds out the team as the week's bonus unit. While he is an exceptionally strong player phase menace, I didn't use him in combat, or use his duo skill in my matches this week. He was, however, quite useful as a Kanto-enabled ranged cavalry for breaking structures and securing ether pods. So let's get to the first match. This match was an intimidating setup to see. While the team is mostly unmerged, it features a wide array of damage profiles and status conditions that are difficult for any one unit to handle. Elise can shut down most tanks with her flash effect, while Yunaka and Sanaki provide a lethal 1-2 punch of DR-piercing true damage-wielding threats. Together with Sanaki's ploy and Yune's stat penalties and panic, this isn't really a setup you'd want to tank. Although with Mer anchoring their team against ranged approaches and warp effects, along with multiple layers of traps and structures to navigate, it's not easy to player phase this either. We're not about to let that stop us, of course. Since Mer's Warp Bubble doesn't come online until the first enemy phase, we can still use Ashe to get Alear over the wall. This lets the rest of the team find safe spots to stand, while keeping everyone 3 spaces away from Alear, allowing her to use null penalties to shut down Sanaki. From there we make sure Lumera sets up the Dragon Vein, and brace for impact. Elise moves in first here. The post-combat flash effect gives her a priority over the other units on her team, even if she doesn't have the best combat, and the flash effect doesn't end up doing anything thanks to Nullsea Disrupt. Yunaka goes next. She has the best combat out of her entire team thanks to Fatal Smoke, and does get Alear below half health and forces her to stay there. Sanaki moves in next, and even though she is attacking a below half health green unit, doesn't quite manage to finish Alear off.
Our bonds connect us.
And from there, Note and Zura are only going to be able to do true damage thanks to Sanaki's ploy, which means that Alear can actually start to out-heal the damage that she's taking for these next combats.
Our bonds connect us.
With most of their team out of commission, it's pretty straightforward to handle the rest of this, even if Mars Warp Bubble does make things a bit more annoying to navigate than I might have liked. We can still use Ash to get Lumera over the wall here, since it's out of range of that Warp Bubble, and after smiting Peony over, we can dance Alear and move her up a tile.
Of course.
This keeps her out of range of Yune being able to borrow penalties for true damage, and means that Alear is just going to shrug her off and get some free healing in the bargain.
Our bonds connect us.
Mer can't reach us, and while she does still shut down warp effects this turn, since she had an ally to work with last turn, it's not too hard for us to go ahead and reach these Aether pods. Even though it does mean we're going to need to take one more turn to close out the match.
Steady now. Let us go. Of course. Leave here at once.
This match was a fun one to see. While I don't run into too many corner setups like this anymore, they can still be extremely effective. This one relies on their Winter Byleth to deter any ranged attackers, and he also works as a solid frontliner together with their maxed out Medius. Tina's ability to steal bonuses is a menace for any offense team, while Katria lends them a lot of extra firepower to work with. Gatekeeper rounds things out neatly, bulking up their frontliners while limiting the ways that attackers can approach the team. I do think Tina's a little exposed here. By switching the positions of Byleth and Dembla and replacing Dembla's Beast skill, Byleth would be able to keep her safe from ranged approaches without desynchronizing the team's threat range. We have a slightly different approach in mind, though. By moving Alear forwards and dancing her, we'll be able to smite her all the way into the trap line to take out Tina, after Lumera rallies her to cripple the team's triangle attacks.
I bestow my blessing.
That also sets up a Dragon Vein for Alear, giving her a bit more stability in the coming enemy phase,
Of course.
which she's going to need thanks to Embla's feud and Triandra's donated start of combat damage. I am careful to isolate Triandra's column here. Not only does it prevent any chance of Triandra dancing, it also stops Gatekeeper from using harsh command to make any of the coming battles more difficult for Alear. Byleth moves in first. While he doesn't get a triangle attack, he does still have a pretty solid combat against Alear. Although that is mostly thanks to Embla's feud, which stops Alear from benefiting from Soaring Guidance. Embla moves in next. It does get some damage to stick, but can't survive this combat. And when Triandra moves in after that, she's really just taking that donated start of combat damage off the field, and makes the coming fights a lot easier for Alear to survive. Like Byleth, Gatekeeper can survive this combat, since Alear doesn't get to use that Soaring Guidance effect,
I am the Fire Emblem.
but all he really does is help heal her. And Medius basically does the same thing.
Let me guide you.
Katria can't quite reach us here, and that's a bit of a problem since I do want to take her off the map. And unfortunately the positioning here makes that a tricky thing to do.
Do not waver.
But if we move Alear in to knock out Katria, and then move Milla over to bait out Gatekeeper, we don't have to worry about ending this match before we pick up both of the Aether pods. And Alear can still enemy phase Byleth in this coming turn. The Supreme Heaven is a pretty scary special to try and tank,
Have a wonderful evening.
but Dragon Blast, together with the Dragon Vein, does mitigate it to a manageable level.
Let me guide
And while it does take all 4 swings to take Byleth down,
Fire Emblem.
she does manage it.
Let us see.
And from there it's just about picking up her second Aether pot, and then letting Alear
It's a
close out the
promise.
match.
Let me aid you. I am the Fire Emblem.
This match was a fun way to close out the week. It's a Hinoka-enabled charge formation with a bit of a defensive twist. Using both Gatekeeper and Mur on the team is a great way to lock down nearly the entire map with Warp Bubble, severely limiting the attacking team's options for navigating the map. Mur herself is also an excellent deterrent for ranged attackers, especially during her bonus week, while Kvasir, Yune, Hinoka, and Ivy do a good job of threatening most of the battlefield. Ivy in particular can catch Gatekeeper users off guard. While Hinoka does give her charge, she also gives herself a +1 movement bonus that can let her reach the bottom right corner through warp bubbles. Even with that in mind, not using Gatekeeper at all really limits the safe spaces we have to work with. Thankfully, like the earlier match, Mur's warp bubble being offline during our first turn means that we can sneak Alear over the mountains with guidance. From there, Peony can dance her forward, and while that does put her outside of Lumera's Dragon Vein, it also sets her up to bait out almost every member of the enemy team this turn, with the helpful upside of shutting down Yune's true damage. Hinoka moves in first, and can get some damage to stick, but it's not really enough to put Alear in any real danger. And while Kvasir can do a little bit more, it's a similar situation. Ivy moves in next, and well, poor Ivy. It's not an ideal day for her.
I am the Fire Emblem.
And by the time Yune starts attacking us, Alear's already starting to stabilize. Yune can't actually out-damage the 7 healing Alear gets here, and Gatekeeper is bulky enough that he actually takes 2 hits to knock out, which only ends up meaning that Alear gets to heal twice.
I am the Fire Emblem.
Unfortunately, Embla's status as the 7th slot unit means that we don't get to bait her out this turn,
Ready.
and that makes navigating this next one a little more annoying than I'd like. I don't want to finish the match yet because I would like to pick up these Aether pots for a clean finish, which means that I need to make sure I'm baiting out Embla without also getting Mur in on the action. It's not too hard to do. Mur's armored movement range does limit her a bit, and Embla's not really too much of a threat on her own.
Our bonds connect us.
And from here it's a pretty straightforward finish. Leon can pick up her first Aether pot, and we can set Alear up to close things out.
Let me aid you.
After, we get Milla all the way up to the top left to grab our second Aether pot.
Truly?
It will be done.
And then we can move Alear in to close things out with one last Dragon Blast.
Our bonds connect us.
I had a great time this week. While the team wasn't fully optimized, it's great to see Alear back in action and doing well. Lumera was a lot of fun to play around too. While I don't think she'll be a consistent part of my teams for a while, she might end up as one of my long-term merch projects. I do have a Discord channel if you'd like to hang out and chat. There's a link in the description, and I've also got a Patreon link there if you'd like to help support the channel. As always, I hope you've enjoyed the video, good luck with your own matches, and I'll see you next time.